Why does American Express keep increasing the annual fees? Hey guys, Sebastian from AskSebby. Today we're going to look at why you should avoid American Express in the early game and also the mid game. So when you're getting started and also when you're still learning the tricks of the trade. Big favor is to give this a thumbs up because I'm probably going to get a lot of downvotes from people who really like American Express, but I think there are a few valid concerns. And if you know anyone else who might benefit from stuff like this who's considering a card, then share this with them because it'll help them out. Also, if you're new here and you want to maximize your credit card points and stuff like that, then consider subscribing. I'm going to start off by saying that I really like American Express cards, and they're probably in my top 3, a few of them at least. So the Platinum card is definitely up there given how much I travel and how I like their lounge access. Number 2 would be something like the Hilton Aspire. I really like how you can generate a lot of statuses for hotels or airline groups if you have high spends, especially if you're someone who can put ad spend or your business spend on your cards. Status doesn't really matter too much when you're traveling within the US because domestic upgrades are pretty crappy, but if you do end up doing a YOLO trip, if you travel internationally to Asia or Europe, then status does matter quite a bit. And no, I'm not saying this to flex, it's foreshadowing the first point, which is that American Express really caters to high spenders. I would argue that if you're a low spender, then you're pretty much a second-class citizen for them, and it's not really a great position to be in. You'd be amazed how many people end up getting into pop-up jail or gel depending on who you ask. So this is when you want to apply for one of their cards, but it tells you that you're not eligible for a bonus because of either something you did or something that they perceive is true. That something is that you're not profitable. So that blue cash every day you got when you graduated or when you were still in school that you don't really use as much now that you have sock drawered is the thing stopping you from getting those other bonuses. The crazy thing too is that there's people who are pre-qualified for those other cards that they actually want to get, but the fact that they soft drawered a card means that you're not seen as a profitable customer. The only and pretty speculative way to get out of jail or gel is to spend money on your cards. So people have said something like $500 to $1,000 a month for a few months, and then hopefully that gets you out. I can probably do a whole video on this topic because there is quite a bit of nuance, but when you think about credit cards, they are using points in order to entice people into the restaurant. The idea being that some people end up paying interest, but for American Express in particular, they're after people who are spending money because that's actually how they make most of their money. If they view you as a non-profitable customer, they don't really want you at the restaurant at all. Alternatively, you're allowed at the restaurant, but you need to order from the menu. You're not allowed at the buffet. So you can still sign up for the card, but you just don't get a bonus. The main takeaway from this section is if you spend less than $500 a month, I would definitely avoid American Express. I don't really think it makes sense early on. There's so many other choices. If you spend between $1,000 to $2,000 a month, then I think it's worth considering. It just depends on your other setups and what you want to prioritize and also the trips you want to take. If you spend between $3,000 to $5,000 a month and obviously up, then I think American Express cards do make a lot more sense because the multipliers start to play a bigger role. If you're someone who feels underpaid and you're looking for a new opportunity, then check out the sponsor of today's video, the AskSebby job board. These are companies that I think are super interesting and also have super high upside due to the equity component. There are some public companies on there as well, but even for those, we've seen public companies do pretty well in the last year. It's been kind of crazy, but yeah, you could have made quite a bit of money from your RSUs, restricted stock options. Job board link down below if you want to check it out. Well, that sounds pretty stupid. Why would I want to spend more money? Why don't I just create some spend by manufacturing it? This leads into number 2, and it's the fact that American Express is probably one of the strictest companies out there. They were one of the first to add anti-gaming language, so if you do manufactured spending, if you do anything that they pretty much don't like, then you're not going to be in a good spot. Examples of what might happen is that they can freeze your accounts, they can confiscate your points, they can claw them back and basically say that you didn't earn them, that you don't have a right to them. They can also just close your accounts. Some of the things that they target are pretty obvious, but there's a lot of people who are new to the game who end up making mistakes that they don't realize are mistakes. A very easy example of this is closing a card early that you either signed up for and got a bonus for, or you upgraded and got an upgrade bonus, or even a retention offer. So in all 3 of those cases, you technically need to keep the card for 12 more months from that time. So if I sign up for a card in July of 2021, if I cancel it in May of 2022, even though it's almost 1 year, they can consider that as abuse. The meta for this is to wait until the annual fee hits, and then you have 30 days from that to either cancel it, downgrade it, or to call in and ask for a retention offer. Depending on how aggressive you are and also how aggressive they want to be, they can do quite a few things, and the biggest one is going to be blacklisting you. Your points are going to be gone right away and you don't have access to them. With other issuers like Chase, they still give you 30 days to at least transfer your points out, so it doesn't feel like a waste. So for Chase, they're letting you cash out, but they're telling you that you're no longer welcome here. Please don't come back. With American Express, what points are you talking about? We don't know what you mean. If you're someone who has a business and you need help with your minimum spends, I'd look into something like Melio. So they allow you to use your credit card to do a payment for your business bills, and it turns into pretty much either a check or electronic payment to that vendor. If you can pay directly, then obviously don't do that because there's no point paying 2.9% in fees. But if you can't, if it's a bill that you would otherwise have to do a bank account transfer for, then it makes a lot of sense for intro bonuses. Link down below if you're new to Melio and you want to check that out. So you're telling me that all I need to do is follow the rules. That seems pretty reasonable. Why would I not want to get an American Express card? This leads into number 3, which is targeting for American Express. So they tend to give the best offers for the Platinum card for people who are not customers with American Express. The rationale is that they want to convert people over from other issuers like Chase, so they want to give you that big fancy bonus. So even as of this weekend, some people got a $150K offer for the Platinum card with the other things attached to it over on Card Match, so that's pretty good. If you're not familiar with Card Match, I'll have a blog post down below walking through how to do that. So technically, if you have an American Express card, you can still get that $150K offer, but it's just less likely. In effect, if you kind of treat this like an SAT question given the relationships of cards, then arguably your best starting point for American Express is going to be that Platinum card for the $150K offer. There are some obvious exemptions here, so if you're a big spender, if you're spending $2,000 to $3,000 a month on dining, then maybe that doesn't really matter as much because you can earn those points back from the gold card. The other exception is if you have a very specific trip, so a very aspirational one generally, and you need those American Express points or those Hilton points in particular, and you want to get that status or something, then in those cases, it does make sense because it helps you get that faster and maybe you don't care about the Platinum as much, you'll take the hit on the Platinum. For most people though, I'd rather get the $150K Platinum and then the other card rather than getting the other card first and then getting a lower Platinum card offer. The obvious problem is that for a lot of people, it just doesn't make sense to get the Platinum card because if you're early on in your career, if you don't have as much spend, then it's really hard to justify. Again, if you want to check if you're targeted for the $150K offer, whether you're a current customer or a new customer in particular, we also have links for other American Express cards over on our website as well. So if you want to support the channel, huge way to do that. Why do you keep talking about travel and all these aspirational trips? Not everyone wants to do that. Number 4 is that I would argue that American Express has a very big focus towards travel, and you can see this pretty obviously in their marketing. If you're someone who flies, then you've probably seen a few American Express ads in your time, and they're one of the first groups to focus on that lounge access. So Chase is now trying to add that, and same with Capital One, but American Express has had that for a long time, and that's been their go-to market. There are some pretty good cashback cards as well, especially if you're a business owner. But even if you are just looking for personal cards, the Blue Cash Everyday, Blue Cash Preferred are pretty easy pickups. And I would argue keeper cards and long-term cards for a lot of people. If you want to run a trifecta, then there technically is a cashback trifecta involving the Blue Business Plus, the BBP, the Gold, and something like the Schwab Platinum. But the main problems with those setups is that they still involve you doing some traveling. If you don't travel at least once or twice a year, then you're probably not going to be able to use all the credits that you get with the card, and you're probably going to be not happy with the changes that they're making and that they're probably going to keep making in the future. This is pretty obvious if you dive into the points rabbit hole as well. So a lot of the upside that we talk about, that 2 cents per point, is geared either towards aspirational travelers or people willing to do the homework and look for sweet spots and pretty much have a lot of currencies, but still be traveling quite a bit. The business and first class flights is why I'm still so interested in credit cards. It's pretty much my jam. But if you are someone who doesn't care about that, then you're in a tough spot. So for me, I'm comfortable paying the $300 to $400 to fly economy to Europe because that's not too bad for me. I'm still relatively young. Points allow me to upgrade that experience, and it means that when I'm there, I'm not really as jet lagged compared to flying economy. Awkwardly moving into number 5, we have the opportunity cost argument. So by getting American Express cards, you're going down that path, you're going into that roller coaster hopping on, but it means that you might miss out on other rides. As much as I like American Express, one of the biggest mistakes I made was jumping on their bandwagon too soon. I basically burned some 524 slots that could have gone to either Southwest or to United, and I feel like that would have been a little bit more valuable to me in the long term rather than just starting American Express sooner. And even outside of Chase, and let's say you completely ignore that part, there's other issuers that I can no longer get now because they don't see me as profitable. So a really good example of this is something like Capital One. They will not approve me for a card because their focus is not necessarily credit score, it's not necessarily income, it's your whole portfolio. American Express will happily approve you even if you have a lot of cards, and they'll still happily give you the bonuses. If anything, for American Express, it's the velocity of your spending with them, so as long as it keeps going up, they seem to be pretty happy. Figure out what your goal is. So is it to maximize your trips? Is it to just figure out a few cards and get some cash back? Or are you trying to get all the bonuses or as many bonuses as possible? Bonus number 6, that's technically not related to mid-game or early game type stuff, but just in general, is that American Express tends to focus on certain cities. Even in San Francisco, I would argue that we're a second or third tier city for them. New York is their number 1 mecca. How do we know this? We can see their partnerships, we can see their events, we can even see companies that they acquire. You can see this with a lot of the other benefits that they're adding as well. So if you're someone who might not be in a major hub, then Uber might not be useful for you. So for my parents, they live in suburbia. They don't really take Ubers. There's not really a use case for that. If they're going to the airport, they're just going to drive or they're going to have a relative drive for them because that's cheaper. That makes a lot more sense. If American Express is making their cards targeted towards a certain group that you don't feel like you're part of, then it might not make sense to force yourself to get their cards. This is speaking as someone who actually gets more value from the Platinum card due to them increasing the annual fee because the credits are things that I actively used other than Equinox. Peacock has been surprisingly useful for the Olympics. They ended up acquiring Resy to replace their system, and Resy is very New York centric. So if you click through, there's about 50 pages worth of New York restaurants. San Francisco has about 9 pages, and even LA, last time I checked, was about 12 pages, and LA has a lot of restaurants. LA and New York have about the same number of restaurants, but New York has so many more on Resy. If you do eat out a lot and you're in New York, Chicago, Boston, Philly, or Atlanta, and you want to check out a new app, check out Seated. They pretty much give you something like 10 to 38% for dining at restaurants. So New York has a bunch of options and tons of different restaurants. 25, 23, 19, 28, 25% back. 38%, that's actually pretty crazy. 38, 22. If you want to check it out and support the channel, we do have a link that gets you $15 back after your first meal. If after all of this you're still interested in American Express cards and you want to learn more about them, we do have links on our website, AskSebby.com. Huge way to support the channel. My question for you guys is, what are your thoughts on American Express's long-term strategy? And are you in that group? Or if you're not, do you still make the American Express cards work for you, or is it a struggle? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you know anyone else who benefit, then share this with them. We'll probably help them out. But otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.